Hello Internet. So I've been thinking a lot lately about beginnings and endings and the vast, often bewildering spaces in between. We live in a world increasingly shaped by digital architectures, by lines of code that dictate how we communicate, how we exchange value, even how we perceive reality. And at the genesis of one of the most disruptive technologies of our time, Bitcoin, stands a figure, or perhaps a group of figures, shrouded in almost mythical anonymity. Today we're diving into one of the greatest mysteries in the world of cryptocurrency, the disappearance of Satoshi Nakamoto, the enigmatic creator of Bitcoin. It's a story that has everything: brilliant innovation, a departure as quiet as a whisper in a hurricane, and a legacy that continues to grow and evolve in ways its founder might never have imagined. The questions surrounding Satoshi are not just about who he was, but why he chose to vanish, leaving behind a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem and an army of developers, miners, and users to carry the torch. It's like if J.D. Salinger had written, and then instead of just retreating from public life, he simply evaporated, leaving only the text and a cryptic note saying, "It's in your hands now." This isn't just a tech mystery, it's a human one. It taps into our fascination with creators who step away from their creations, with the idea that something so monumental could be born from such a deliberately obscured origin. We'll explore the breadcrumbs left behind and the compelling reasons why someone might build a new world and then choose to walk away from it entirely. So grab your metaphorical detective hats and let's get into it, because the story of Satoshi Nakamoto is, in many ways, the story of the digital age itself. The departure of Satoshi Nakamoto wasn't a dramatic door-slamming exit, it was more like a slow fade, a gradual dimming of a light until it was simply gone. The last definitive public post from Satoshi on the Bitcoin Talk forum, a space they themselves created, was on December 12, 2010. In it, they addressed some minor details about the software, a few bug fixes, a note about denial of service vulnerabilities. There was no grand farewell, no "so long and thanks for all the fish." It was mundane, technical, and utterly unremarkable as a sign-off, which in itself is remarkably telling about the kind of person or people we might be dealing with. It suggests a focus on the work, on the system, rather than on personal aggrandizement or a need for a public bow. This final forum post, in retrospect, feels like a carefully placed period at the end of a very long, very complex sentence. Satoshi had laid the groundwork, built the engine, and handed over the keys without much fanfare. They mentioned there was more work to do on DOS, but then just silence. The community, still nascent but incredibly passionate, continued the discussions, continued the development, perhaps initially expecting Satoshi to chime in again, but the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, and the realization slowly dawned that the architect might have left the building, possibly for good. It's like the quietest revolution you can imagine, where the leader just slips out the back door, while everyone is busy working on the manifesto. Then, a few months later, on April 23, 2011, came what is widely considered to be Satoshi's very last known private communication. It was an email to Gavin Andresen, one of the core developers who Satoshi had been increasingly entrusting with Bitcoin stewardship. In this email, Satoshi famously stated, "I've moved on to other things and probably won't be around in the future." Again, the language is understated, almost casual, considering the magnitude of what was being left behind. It's this subtlety that fuels so much of the speculation. Was this a planned exit strategy from the beginning, or a decision forced by circumstances we can only guess at? The trust placed in Gavin Andresen, and by extension the broader Bitcoin community, is a crucial element here. Satoshi wasn't just abandoning a project but consciously decentralizing its leadership. This act of stepping away, of letting the creation stand on its own 2 feet, is perhaps the most potent testament to the core philosophy of Bitcoin itself, a system that doesn't rely on a central authority. It's as if Satoshi performed the ultimate act of decentralization by decentralizing their own involvement, a kind of digital self-abnegation for the sake of the project's ideological purity. The silence that followed wasn't just an absence, it became a foundational part of Bitcoin's mythology. And so, the digital ghost was born. Satoshi left behind a functioning currency, a robust protocol, and a burgeoning global community, all while ensuring their own identity remained an enigma. This wasn't just about privacy, it felt like a deliberate act to ensure that Bitcoin wouldn't have a single point of failure, a figurehead whose personal fate could influence the project. The message, implicit in the silence, was clear. Bitcoin is bigger than any one person, even its creator. And that, my friends, is a profoundly powerful idea to set loose upon the world, then quietly watch from the shadows, or perhaps not watch at all. Naturally, when a figure of such monumental importance vanishes, the human desire to fill that vacuum, to put a face to the name, becomes almost irresistible. And so, the great Satoshi manhunt, or perhaps I should say Satoshi hunt, began, leading to a fascinating cast of characters, each with their own compelling connections to the Bitcoin origin story. First up is often Hal Finney, a pioneering cryptographer and an early Bitcoin adopter. He was, incredibly, the recipient of the very first Bitcoin transaction from Satoshi. Finney was a known advocate for digital privacy and cryptographic currencies long before Bitcoin. His early involvement and technical prowess make him a strong candidate, though sadly, Finney passed away in 2014 from ALS, and he always denied being Satoshi. His story is poignant, a brilliant mind at the forefront of a revolution. Then there's Nick Szabo, another titan in the world of cryptography and digital currency. Szabo conceived of BitGold, a precursor to Bitcoin that shares many philosophical and technical similarities, years before Bitcoin's white paper appeared. His writing style, his deep understanding of decentralized systems, and his known interest in pseudonyms have all pointed fingers in his direction. Szabo, however, has consistently and firmly denied being Satoshi. The parallels between BitGold and Bitcoin are undeniable, though, making him a perennial favorite in the Who is Satoshi sweepstakes. It's like finding an early unpublished manuscript by a famous author that bears an uncanny resemblance to their later masterpiece. The story took a rather dramatic, and, for one individual, deeply unsettling turn with Dorian Nakamoto. In 2014, a Newsweek cover story famously declared this Japanese-American physicist, whose birth name is Satoshi Nakamoto, to be Satoshi. The evidence, however, was largely circumstantial: his engineering background, his libertarian leanings, and a somewhat misunderstood quote. Dorian vehemently denied the claim, and the resulting media frenzy highlighted the intense public desire for an answer, sometimes at the expense of individual privacy. The community largely rallied to defend his privacy, and most now believe he was a case of mistaken identity, a man unfortunately thrust into a global spotlight he never sought. Adam Back is another prominent figure in the cypherpunk movement and the inventor of Hashcash, a proof-of-work system that is actually cited in the Bitcoin white paper. His British background aligns with some of Satoshi's linguistic quirks, like the spelling of optimize or color, and his deep expertise in the foundational technologies of Bitcoin is undeniable. Back, like the others, has denied being Satoshi. He is now the CEO of Blockstream, a company heavily involved in Bitcoin development, which some see as a natural continuation of an originator's work, while others see it simply as the career of a highly influential figure in the space. The connections are there, but definitive proof remains elusive. And finally we arrive at Craig Wright, an Australian computer scientist who, unlike the others, has actively and repeatedly claimed to Satoshi Nakamoto. This claim has been met with widespread skepticism and controversy within the cryptocurrency community. While Wright has provided some forms of proof, these have largely been debunked or found unconvincing by cryptographic experts. The saga of Craig Wright is complex and ongoing, involving court cases and public disputes. It highlights the difficulty of proving such a claim, especially when the original Satoshi took such care to remain anonymous. The community largely demands cryptographic proof, like moving early mined bitcoins or signing a message with Satoshi's private keys, which has not been forthcoming in a verifiable way. So why create something so revolutionary, something with the potential to reshape global finance, and then just walk away? The reasons for Satoshi's disappearance are perhaps as intriguing as their identity. One of the most commonly cited possibilities revolves around the immense legal and regulatory risks associated with creating an alternative monetary system. Bitcoin, by its very nature, challenges the authority of central banks and governments. For an individual or even a small group, being the public face of such a system could invite unwanted attention, legal battles, or even personal danger. Think about the history of private currencies or attempts to create them. It's often fraught with peril. Consider the context. Bitcoin emerged in the shadow of the 2008 financial crisis, a time of deep distrust in traditional financial institutions. Satoshi's writings often hinted at a desire for a system free from the control of these fallible entities. To remain anonymous could have been a strategic imperative, ensuring that the project couldn't be easily shut down by targeting its founder. If no one knows who you are, it's much harder to exert pressure. This line of reasoning paints Satoshi as a pragmatic idealist, someone who understood that for their creation to truly thrive and achieve its decentralized vision, the creator themselves had to become decentralized, or rather invisible. Another compelling set of reasons is deeply ideological. The cypherpunk movement, from which many of Bitcoin's core ideas sprang, has always valued privacy, anonymity, and the power of cryptography to empower individuals against overarching state or corporate control. For someone steeped in this ethos, creating Bitcoin and then stepping away without claiming personal credit would be the ultimate expression of those ideals. It's a profound statement against the cult of personality, against the idea that great innovations must be tied to a single, identifiable genius. Instead, the focus remains on the technology, on the network, on the idea itself, rather than the individual. Furthermore, there's the argument of strategic silence for the good of the project. Had Satoshi remained a public figure, every word, every opinion they expressed would have carried immense weight, potentially stifling organic debate and development within the community. Their pronouncements could have become de facto directives, centralizing influence around one voice. By disappearing, Satoshi forced the Bitcoin community to develop its own governance mechanisms, to debate its future direction, and to reach consensus through a decentralized process. This leaderless nature is often cited as one of Bitcoin's greatest strengths, a resilience born from the deliberate absence of its founder. And finally, perhaps the simplest yet profoundly human reason. Maybe Satoshi just wanted to move on. Creating Bitcoin was undoubtedly an immense undertaking, years of focused, intense work. Having launched it into the world, having seen it take its first tentative steps and then begin to run, perhaps Satoshi felt their work was done. They had planted the seed, and now it was up to others to tend the garden. It's a narrative of completion, of an inventor satisfied with their creation, choosing a quiet life over the chaotic, demanding world of being the figurehead of a global phenomenon. The silence in this light is not just strategic but a personal choice for peace. And so, we're left with this beautiful, frustrating, and endlessly fascinating puzzle. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they were or are, gifted the world a technology that continues to spark debate, innovation, and a fundamental rethinking of what money and trust can mean in a digital age. Their decision to vanish is as much a part of the Bitcoin legend as the white paper itself, a masterstroke of mystery that has arguably only enhanced the mystique and resilience of their creation. It's a void that invites speculation but also, crucially, allows the technology to stand or fall on its own merits, unencumbered by a founder's biography. The identity of Satoshi might one day be definitively revealed, perhaps through some cryptographic miracle or a deathbed confession, or perhaps it will remain one of history's great unsolved mysteries, like the identity of Jack the Ripper or the fate of D.B. Cooper, but with far more significant global implications. And in a strange way, maybe that's for the best. The anonymity of Satoshi forces us to focus on the what, the Bitcoin protocol, rather than the who. It democratizes the narrative and reinforces the decentralized ethos at its core. The mystery of Satoshi Nakamoto continues to intrigue and baffle us. Whether they are watching from the shadows or have truly moved on, their legacy in the world of cryptocurrency is undeniable. What do you think happened to Satoshi? Was it an individual, a group? Why do you think they disappeared? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to be awesome.